kérdésem az lenne, hogy elégségesnek tartja.
My question would be whether the Prime Minister considers this kind of decision sufficient, or is there perhaps any other support to help the Hungarians in Transcarpathia, and could this decision affect Zelensky's possible visit to Hungary?
He should be banned, that's what you want to say. Negotiations, they are negotiable. Apologies. The people of St. Gothard are famously well-mannered, so I thought this wasn't necessary. He will say it as harshly as I do, but the problem is that it's not those carrying out the conscription who should be banned, but the Ukrainian president. This is a legitimate and sensible suggestion. Now let's talk a bit about this and its context. First, let's send our greetings to the people of Transcarpathia, to the Hungarians, who are in a very difficult situation. Let's send them the message that we support them. We don't make a big fuss about it, because they are already being harassed by the authorities. But every single Hungarian soldier who dies on the Ukrainian front can count on the help of the Hungarian state not only in words. We reach out to the families, and wherever we can, we help everyone, we just don't make a big fuss about it. We help everyone, we just don't beat it up. But there are the high-profile deaths, because there are those who die in combat on the front, but there is violence due to forced conscription, concerning their health condition. Conscription that completely disregards those who then do not die at the front, but before who are beaten to death, like the first victim, the other taken away, we know what it's about. And this cannot be tolerated without a word. Peter Sajarto has a mandate to keep this issue on the agenda in Brussels. We are dealing with this at home, we note everything, we know everything, we record everything, and everything will be in due time. The consequence. Because everything has its appointed time. It was long ago when it was like this. We looked like fools, and we let them mess with us. That is over, and it's better if everyone notes that. Our neighbors, especially towards Ukraine, but we are in a different world. Certainly since 2010. However, what you mentioned in your introduction, you said about how and in what ways we should shape our relations with the Ukrainians beyond the forced conscription is an important question. Now my position is that the Ukrainians should not be allowed into the European Union. And I tell the Hungarians that we should not want to belong to a military or an economic alliance with them, because that will lead to trouble, two kinds of trouble. The first is that they will drag us into the war. And this remains true even if a peace agreement is made. Because who can guarantee that on the 1,200-kilometer-long front section, even if there is peace now, 1 year later, 2 years later, there will not be war again in the same way? No one can guarantee that. And if we are members, they will pull us into the war. This is what Mr. Weber is talking about. There is no such thing as a European Union member state being attacked or getting involved in a military conflict, and the others. Everyone goes, the money goes, the soldiers go, the weapons go. Therefore, the Ukrainians should not be allowed into the European Union in the foreseeable future, because they present a continuous war threat to us that at any time a new Russian-Ukrainian conflict could arise, and we would be involved in this conflict, for which we have nothing to do with. The second issue, if we allow the Ukrainians in. The farmers, our local producers, are already grumbling because of the influx from there. Products produced under much easier regulations, which are of poorer quality but cheaper, are already challenging Hungarian agriculture. So we must establish some form of cooperation with the Ukrainians that is beneficial for both them and us. Not something that only benefits them and harms us, no, but something that is good for everyone, which I call a strategic partnership. We will come to an agreement, but not about membership. That's a different ballgame, but about how we will trade, how investments will proceed calmly, one by one, without creating an obligation that would drag us into a war against Russia alongside them. That must not happen. Therefore, we need to cooperate with the Ukrainians, but membership is out of the question. That's the first thing. The second thing is that the Ukrainians must understand that they need to abandon their constant demands in Brussels, that they always want to arrange for Hungary to be cut off, separated from cheap Russian energy. As long as Ukraine does this, then Ukraine, I must apologize, I think, is our enemy. Ukraine is infringing on our fundamental interest by doing so. Constantly demanding, and Brussels is urging it, to disconnect Hungary from cheap Russian energy. Whoever does this is not an adversary, but an enemy of Hungary. Let me tell you the numbers. If there is no Russian oil and Russian gas, then you and all of us will pay the following prices. Today, an average utility bill for a year, I am stating the average, is 250,000 forints. But in Poland and the Czech Republic, it's 800,000 or even 1 million. Your question is ultimately about how stable, fixed, and orderly Ukraine is, and the future of the Ukrainian state and army. So we had to be concerned that a situation might arise comes about in which things in Ukraine spiral out of control, and they escape from oversight, and from that point onward Ukraine might pose a threat to Hungary with its massive army, which has been beefed up with European funds, right? Who, incidentally, also make threats, because there's sometimes some commander lets slip that they can reach Budapest in however many hours if necessary. Right? These are the kinds of things our Ukrainian friends say while asking for our vote. So the answer is there's no Ukraine's future is settled. Whether the Russians will fully occupy Ukraine, or in the end, which I wouldn't bet on, but the Union plays this game, that Ukraine and the Union together will defeat the Russians on the front line, and push them back as far as Moscow, or an ungoverned territory is created, another Afghanistan, or something similar, nobody can say for sure today. All I can tell you is that we then run the least risk if we stay out of any such conflict that is on Ukraine's territory. And in the meantime, we take care to strengthen ourselves, financially for instance. It's no coincidence, I don't want to talk about this at length, it's no coincidence that Hungary has never had as large foreign currency reserves and gold reserves as it has today. There is a reason for this. And never has Hungary spent so much money on acquiring modern weapons and building up the military's capability to stop anyone who would turn against Hungary.
$25 करोड़ गरीब गरीबी को परास्त करके बाहर निकले।
For the good of our nation, let's work together and let's truly make America great again.
The fastest news breaks.
Requested PM saying that look, you will have to speak to Putin and to Zelensky.
The biggest news makers.
The relationship with India is probably the most important bilateral relationship the U.S. will have for the rest of this century.
The capital delivered quite an election result today.
Expert analysis.
The million-dollar question today is how to stop this dance of death.
Ground reports.
I'm standing at the crossroad of the Kumbh Mela. Behind me are more than 100 entry ghats.
Long-form interviews.
Exclusionary politics is reflected in Manipur case as well. You don't bother because this is a small state.
Deep dive into burning issues.
It's often said DRC could be the richest country in the whole world. It's because of what sits underneath.
Why exactly did the US topple the Sheikh Hasina government?
HT videos. We don't just break news, we break it down.